The media's impact on the right to a fair trial. A content analysis of pretrial publicly in capital cases. Written by Shireen Bakshay and Craig Haney. In this course, we'll be covering a wide range of opinions, ethics, and general facts around the death penalty. Just for the sake of context, the content covered is in Chapter 17. It is important to know that the death penalty has been abolished in many countries. However, America is one of the countries that has not yet abolished or completely abolished the death penalty. In the United States, what crimes tend to result in capital punishment conviction? The term for that is aggravated murder, or the only type of murder that qualifies for the death penalty. Examples of aggravated murder, as explained in our textbook, include murder for hire, murder of more than one person, murder of an officer, murder of a child, or murder during the place of another felony. It is important to understand the public's view on the death penalty in order to fully understand this study. According to the textbook, 60% of people are in favor of the death penalty in the United States. This study has many goals, which we will touch on later, but if the media causes trial to be biased, how many have we falsely accused and how many innocent people have been put to death? There is a possibility of error in capital cases, and forensic evidence appears to be the innocent's saving grace. Another important topic this article hits on is the influence of juries. The decision of the jury is the most powerful, as it is quite literally playing with the defendant's fate. Some questions to ask as we dive into the study are: does the media have an influence on trials? Are jurors truly unbiased, even if they were to hear of the case in passing? And do defendants truly get to exercise the Sixth Amendment due to these circumstances? The goal of this study is to uncover the results of media bias. When watching the news, do you tend to trust the reporters? Well, it seems logical to, as they are the ones providing you with the information. This study will show that the media has a tendency to promote the crime master narrative. According to this article, the definition of the crime master narrative is that criminals have innate badness and free autonomous choice to do harm. The crime master narrative is basically the camaraderie of the public initially believing the crime was committed by a monster. We will discuss the defamation of character and the other things that the media reports on. But the highly exaggerated information has the possibility to be admissible in trial. But because it was presented on the news, will the public still believe it? The hypothesis is, it is expected that more exposure to the media before the trial, the more likely the jury will result in a guilty verdict. This article explains how social media has become a popular way of consumption of the news. How reliable could that be? We also have to consider that reporters tend to focus on the things that will likely get them clicks or views. Why would they report on something as boring as the criminal's backstory when they could provide gruesome details of the crime committed? According to this article, and I quote, "The study analyzes publicity files for each case to determine what type of information was contained in the publicity itself, the amounts of negative versus positive info, and the extent to which the case-related stories relied on prosecution, law enforcement, or defense-oriented sources," end quote. As well as, start quote, "examining whether the nature and amount of prejudicial pretrial publicity that surrounded the cases appear to be related to the fate of the change of venue motions themselves," end quote. Now we can dive into the study itself. For context, this study took place from 1979 to 2005. Our sample would be considered the people involved in the trial. This is because they are the ones taken from the general population. Also, the study was not one of which participants and examiners, but researchers examining those involved in cases via media in courtroom. It focuses on 20 cases in 14 different counties in the state of California. The criteria for these cases were that they had to be capital cases, they needed to be diverse, and they were selected based on, quote, pre-trial change of venue motions, facts of the case, and access to the entire publicity files, end quote. The study itself waded through many articles, separated into 3 categories. Researchers wanted to find information regarding neutral, negative, and positive statements written about the crime or the criminal. The cases themselves were also separated because they wanted to see if there was a change of venue, or if there was no change / the change was denied. The results of the study can be broken up as well. General information was that, concerning the articles, there were no major changes in reporting. The content that was covered in the articles was consistent, even if the platform it was presented on changed. Some results regarding the articles is that 75% of the article study contained pre-trial coverage. What is pre-trial coverage? It includes negative character statements or exaggerations about the crime. Only 19% of articles contain positive pre-trial statements. This includes positive character statements and some sympathy toward the defendant. The content of the articles all contain factual, neutral information such as facts and background. The results of the jury. Cases with heavy negative media attention often resulted in the venue not changing. This seems ironic, as wouldn't you want to change the venue, the pool of jurors, and the less exposure to media coverage? 32% of the cases did result in a venue change. Exposure to the media did in fact cause jurors to more likely convict harsher in these capital cases. Negative media coverage resulted in a guilty verdict. So to answer the question stated at the beginning of this presentation is yes, the media does compromise the defendant's right to a fair trial. The influence of the study is important, as jurors need to take what the media says with a grain of salt. Potentially having some form of testimony in the courtroom before the trial was to begin reminding jurors to try to have a blank slate opinion before going into trial. The effects of this could cause more innocents to go free, as well as those convicted to get lesser sentences. Before I fully wrap up, I want to gloss over some limitations to the study as well. The first limitation is that the cases studied were only a small number, only 20. Along with that, the cases studied were only in the state of California. Overall, the study did provide some thought-provoking information. As I honestly expected the media to negatively influence the trial, I now can recognize other aspects as well. I think we as citizens need to question our sources as well as continue to fight for a more equal justice system.